All right, guys, we are back for another episode of Marketing Without Rules, the show where we celebrate people who exemplify the hunter mindset. They make moves, they color outside the lines, they have creative ways to channel the attention of their community into currency. The show is sponsored by BlueCrocus Solutions, a web design and SEO agency focused on helping home service companies. My name is Lewis. I am your host. And today, I have the pleasure of chatting with Matt McQuinn, a fellow Frederictonian. We live in the same city, and Matt's done a lot of really cool stuff. We're connected way back, but I guess through my wife. So mutual friends through my wife, we connected. Then you worked in the junk removal business a bit when we got that going, and you now co-own an agency called Coldlytics. So Matt, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Excited.
Yeah, it's going to be a good time. We're going to chat about, one of the big topics that we're going to chat about is email, since that's Matt's world, but marketing in general is going to be a fun conversation. So talk a little bit about how you guys started Coldlytics. I actually don't know if I know the whole story. I can't remember when we kind of connected, because I think when you were working in integrity junk removal and helping out, you were also starting the company, correct?
Yeah, there was happening at the same time. So to give everybody context, I had been fired from a day job that was previously managing a ton of marketing related problems, specifically trying to get clients for our clients through largely cold email. And what that meant was I had to help not just myself, but a team of what grew to be 7 other account executives, the business owner's information of potential prospects at scale every day of the week. And that became very difficult to do. And what I found was through reaching out to an awful lot of people using information we'd sourced many different ways, the lists that we had kind of cleaned up ourselves worked the best. And not only that, but they were also researched by people. They weren't just like bought from a data provider. And I was like, oh, this sucks, because that's the result we need, but it's also the most difficult thing to accomplish. So how do we accomplish this? How do we scale this? So if you are not in an agency and you're not in a tech related environment, there's still direct applications for what I'll kind of share on what I learned and how this grew, which is largely, if you were to just take a breath in and close your eyes and think for a second, who are 3 people in your city that if you had a contract with, you would have more work than you knew what to do with, right? There's 3 companies. It's probably a developer, maybe it's a large property management entity or an arm of government or municipality in some capacity. And then once you have that, it's like, oh my goodness, how do we fulfill all this now suddenly? That's the position you want to be in. That's the position you can get in by simply talking to people. And you are in your truck, you are at your computer as little as possible, probably. You are holding tools in your hands, and that means time to sit down and try to talk to municipalities or to other property management companies doesn't exist. So how do you bridge that gap? You take an hour out of your week and you go, okay, I'm going to think about who these people are. I'm going to get access to how to reach them. That's not in person, because you don't have time for that in most cases. And that looks like sending people an email that's genuine, authentic, and relevant, because you're both 2 business related functions of your city. Great. Okay, so you're off to a half decent start. How do you find those people's information is the big problem that I was experiencing, that you are also going to experience if you do this too. And what we found was, if you are willing to clean up a list that has been researched by people who have been trained to go find personal, or rather business information, but direct to a person, you end up with a really tangible list that you can go talk to and make this business happen. And the fact of the matter is, it sucks. It's the thing I hated most about my job. It's the thing my team hated most. The things our client hated most was this data. And so I've tried to make a business, and I guess I've succeeded, out of making that as hands-off as possible. So this is what Coldlytics does in essence. Is we said no more having to do all that cleanup yourself, having to do all this digging and talking to researchers and cleaning stuff up and checking on emails. Just simply go in here to this platform, and just a website, type in what you need, follow the screen and click go. And then 24 hours later, you get back the list of who the people are that are exactly what you're looking for and how to reach those people. Then you spent 30 minutes doing that. You spend your next 30 minutes the following day. So it's an hour broken up over 2 days, actually emailing people. And the problem with scaling that initially was we had to charge people to do it. It was very expensive. It was hard to get it from just a prototype to something we could afford to do at scale. And fortunately, we've grown to a point now where we have a free version of the platform where somebody who is in a business like this, where, hey, 1 or 2 or 3 more contracts could be a really big deal for you. You can literally go into Coldlytics now and for free dictate what that looks like, get that information back, and you can get up to 25 contacts direct that are guaranteed to be accurate emails every single month, and just do this half hour, 2 days a month. That could change the course of your business for the year, right? And so that was the power of what I knew the data could do. If we could systemize this, make it accessible to people and less confusing. And that's kind of what happened in my journey. Was I experienced a lot of pain in doing something that had a lot of potential. And I met somebody who's really smart with computers, smarter than I was, that could make a system, a website, a platform that people could use to get it. And we just worry about everything else behind the scenes on behalf of the people who need that information. So that's kind of a condensed version of kind of why I'm doing this and how it kind of got to what it is.
That is awesome. That is a good founder story. Let me know if I spelled that right there. I'll leave that on the screen for a little bit there. So coldlytics.com if you're watching on video or watching live, I've got it down on the bottom of the screen. But yeah, I was listening to an interview with Richard Branson last week, and he talked about, he doesn't just create businesses. He's done a lot of business stuff over the years, some really big ones. But he said he always tries to solve a problem. And I think that's really cool how yours was born out of the frustration that you ran into, in person, trying to scrape the leads. And there's an interesting thing. I want to get into email subject lines because, you've got the data now. So really, if you're a home service company or a business in general, you can go to coldlytics.com. I don't get any kickback for this. I just think it's a cool product, and I think Matt's a cool dude. Go to Coldlytics, and you can type in what you need and who you want to connect with, and you can get 25 human scraped leads or human scraped data points of businesses in your area that you can reach out to, which is amazing. It saves you a ton of time. It saves you, having to verify data that you get from, D7 Lead Scraper or any of those other scraping tools. They're going to do it for you. And then you can get on their paid plans and, get a consistent stream of leads coming through. But so let's say someone's got those 25 emails or contacts from you for free from Coldlytics. What do they do now? What would you recommend emailing manually, or would you recommend a software? And then what subject line should they use so that they even get opened?
Good question. So as with most good business recommendation, the answer is that it depends. But obviously, there's a range of people listening to this, and I want to try and make it useful for you specifically.
Let's do a mock-up scenario so that it's going to be specific, but specific enough that we can it can be useful to someone, and they can tailor it to what they want. So let's say it is a demolition company looking to connect with general contractors.
Perfect. So if you're a demolition company and you've already attained this list of contractors in any particular arm of contracting, the next step is to determine, hey, are you going to do this consistently, or is this a flash in the pan? If this is a flash in the pan and you're going to try this one time and you're going to email 3 people, open up your inbox, type out an email, try and pick the people on that list that you have some connection to in some way, shape, or form, whether it's you grew up down the block from a house they built or whatever it may be. Find something and shoot your shot. And that alone can open the door to do an awful lot. That is the less scalable way of growing that demolition business. Now, there is a step above this that is closer to what a marketing agency might do for you, that you can do for yourself, that's not overly complicated, but it's much easier once you set it up. So it takes an hour or 2 to set something up like this on the front end, but then once you do it, it's 15 minutes here and there rather than an hour every time or more. So the easy way to do this at scale is to sign up to a platform designed for sending what are called cold emails. That's what this is. It's sending a cold email. An unsolicited email is the definition, that's relevant to the receiver. If it's not relevant to the receiver, then that's what we call spam. So obviously you want to make sure you're reaching the right people with something relevant to them. And once you've checked those boxes, a couple that I'll shout out, probably the most familiar one I'm up to speed with right now is one called woodpecker.co. There's another one that is very similar to that. If you wanted to see a side-by-side comparison, called Smart Lead, that you could look at. And the reason I bring up those two in particular is that if you're going to consistently send emails to people, there's a risk you need to be aware of that's easily mitigated. That risk is, if you send, let's say, 25 emails out every month from your personal email inbox to people, and you didn't take a whole lot of time, like I told you to not even a whole lot of time, but enough to make it relevant to the person, okay, we've all made that mistake. But the reality is, even if you did a good job at that, there's someone who's going to see it and say, I don't know this person, mark as spam. Okay, what's the big deal? Well, the problem is your own email address can get flagged, and then your own clients stop receiving those demolition invoices that you're waiting to see paid. So you don't want to do that if you're going to send 25 emails a month at scale. You don't want to do that out of your own inbox. You just go to a platform like Woodpecker and pay them $3 a month for a custom domain, which is a website URL, and a custom email address associated with that domain. So it completely protects everything. And it just looks like your brand, typically what people do. If you're xyzdemolition.com, they'll go xyz-demolition.com or try xyzdemolition.com. And then your email is, Matt or whatever your name is at that. And then you can comfortably, in this platform like Woodpecker or Smartly, take the 25 contacts, click download from Coldlytics and click upload in that platform. And you put them in there and you click send. And it's got the email that you like to send out programmed in there because you've typed it in at this point. And then every month you can just come back in and go, oh, I'm just going to try something a little different this time. Let's change the subject line. Let's change the offer that we make them. Let's make it a little bit shorter this month. And doing that, you'll be able to look back and go, oh man, I had a lot of interest out of that one particular month. I should go back and do that. And the reality is, all you're doing is going to Coldlytics or wherever you're getting your data, if elsewhere, grabbing that, which should only take you 15 minutes or less, and uploading that into the other platform and clicking go. Like, we're talking 30 minutes or less out of your month to potentially have people come back and say, hey, yes, please come quote this service for us. Please come pick up these sensitive materials and shred them, or clean out whatever facility that rotates every week, every weekend, you name it. So there is a ton of opportunity in doing this consistently, predictably, much more than there is sending a one-off email. But what I like to tell people is when you're trying something new, it's intimidating, and it doesn't hurt to send the first one from your own email inbox just to see how it felt, and then go, oh, well, maybe it worked, maybe it didn't. But if I want to actually see results, like anything in life, like I did to get my business to where it is already, I'm going to have to show up and try that again. And so that's where another platform to connect that data to takes all the pain away and just makes it really easy to keep doing that time and time again.
That's huge. Yeah, there's it's kind of sucks that you're saying you can't go to the gym once and then get swole. But I suppose it's the same with email, isn't it?
It's the exact same. You mentioned subject lines to me. Woodpecker sent me at the beginning of the year, because I work closely with them. We both have a lot of the same clients, so we talk to each other about what's working, what isn't. And they said over the last year's data that they were looking at, 2-word subject lines have a 23% better open rate relative than the subject lines that have 6+ words. So a lot of people like to write an email and put a big old sentence in the subject line and say, email for Bob about demolition services. It's like, okay, great, makes sense. But apparently you're 1 in 5 times more likely to actually see success out of that by just shortening that down to 2 words and finding out whether that's, Bob's quote or whatever it might be that you send through. You just have to test and iterate those things.
Interesting. Can you give some examples? I'm going to ask Ivan's questions here just while he's on. Ivan's asking, is Instantly the best in the industry? Matt was talking about Woodpecker and
Yeah.
Smart Lead, I think. What's your take on Instantly?
Yeah.
I think I'd asked you about Instantly the other week as well.
Yeah. Instantly is probably the fastest growing in the industry. To my knowledge, they don't have, at least last time I used it, they didn't have the ability to buy a domain and set up an email in 5 minutes. And the problem with that, in my opinion, right now is that time is money, especially in this world of AI and everything else that's happening. Time was money before, but now time saving shortcuts to do things that are valuable really need to be necessitated. So great if they've got that functionality, but the reality is when you set up a new email and a new domain, there's a bunch of stuff on the back end that you have to do, like redirect that domain. And you have to set up DNS settings that are really confusing, especially if you're not a tech person. Excuse me. And I know at least Woodpecker, they configure all that for you in the back end, and it happens in literally less than 10 minutes of you clicking the buttons and paying $3. So that to me is like a massive edge. And if you've got the time of day and you're sitting around anyway, I'm sure go figure it out. But it literally took me before I truly understood what was happening in the DNS settings about 3 years. Now that's because I did it sporadically, only as needed. When I actually sat down, it still took me a couple of days to figure out what all this jargon meant and these networking terms. And you can save yourself a wealth of headaches. So great. I love Instantly as an interface and as a platform for sequencing emails. It's fantastic. And it would be my recommendation. I just have a better experience and more knowledge now with Woodpecker than I do with Instantly, but it's still a great platform by
That's
all
super
measures.
cool. I don't believe it does have that, at least when I set it up a couple weeks ago. Because I set it up and then I was asking you because you were mentioning Woodpecker. Because I had tried Woodpecker when we started Integrity, and I'd used that to connect with business owners for our gift card giveaways. That's how I got a bunch of gift cards for free. But I don't know if they had the domain set up back then, because I think we just used the integrity.ca.
It just rolled out this past like 6 months. Yeah,
that's amazing. I would definitely recommend Woodpecker over Instantly for someone who's trying to do it themselves. Ivan, I know you're in the space of doing web design and whatnot. Ivan does a lot of SMS marketing as well, which is awesome. We're gonna have him on the podcast here soon. But
nice.
Instantly does a warm-up sequence. So I'm warming up an email right now to do some outreach for getting backlinks. And does Woodpecker have something like that for someone, or are they going to start at small enough scale that it doesn't matter and it's going to warm up itself?
Yeah, they've got the warm-up built in as well. Looks very similar to what I've set up in Instantly before. I actually did set it up, and I want to say I didn't check to see if it was the exact same configuration, but there's generally two approaches. For those interested, the first one is that when you warm up an email, basically the concept is a new email account is more likely to be interpreted as spam if it's emailing a bunch of people, and it never did that before. So to alleviate that, they warm up accounts. So what does warming up an account look like? One of two things: starting your email at 1 on the first day, 5 on the second day, 10 on the third day, and capping that at a set point, generally 20 to 30 a day at the most. Okay, that's method one. The other usually uses that in addition to sending a bunch of emails within a network of trusted emails back and forth to each other, and they all reply to each other, and they're all doing this under the hood. And this is a technical thing that's programmed that happens in your email account. You don't even notice it, but it's essentially replicating human behavior to tell all of these different email providers that the emails traveled through. Hey, not only is that person sending a lot of emails out of a new account, but they're getting replies back to those emails, and they all seem to be talking about similar things because they're all written by AI talking to each other. So that type of email warm-up is, I believe, what Instantly does. I believe that's what Woodpecker does. And it's effective and it works as far as I know. But at the end of the day, even if you just said, hey, I don't want to do any of that weird stuff, I'm just literally going to send 1 this day and 5 the next day. Tried and true, that's how every email account that exists today began. So that's going to work for you unless you're upsetting people and getting marked as spam for being careless in how you went about it.
I love it. Ivan's got a couple more great questions, but can we just talk about your background here? It's so cool. We got like a foot of snow last night, and it's just like blowing off the roof of the building behind you.
It's just been coming off the roof all day. Yeah,
it's so cool. Ivan says, do you use Amazon servers or go through Microsoft or Google servers? Amazon servers are known to get domains blocked more often. I've used Instantly over 3 separate times. Warm-up takes forever, and if domains are on Amazon servers, they get blocked. Pain in the butt, if you ask me.
Good question. So I think there's information pertaining to each of these email providers. And I love how technical this is. Normally people don't have questions like this. So kudos to you for being this far into getting the knowledge. Here's what I will say. You're talking about the, generally speaking, 1% improvements that in cold email, most people tout as the end all be all, and they don't tell you that, first of all, we're talking about 1% gains here. So let's have that context. But within that, I can't tell you Amazon versus the other. Here's what I do know. Microsoft is less forgiving than Google. All email providers like to receive emails from the same email provider because they believe that if it's a user in their account, it's less likely to be spam because they take care of the spam users in their own platform. So why would it be spam if it came from Google to Google, right? So there's something to be said for that. The largest two platforms, of course, are Outlook or Microsoft and Google. And then there's many, many other email providers out there that are widely used as well. Generally speaking, I'm setting up a Google email almost every time. I have tested and set up other things, and I didn't see any measurable gains enough that were worth the effort or headache. Use your favorite provider. That's probably going to cause you the least amount of stress, and that will leave enough creative energy for the email you have to write. And that's what's going to hit harder than whether you sent it from email and from Amazon, Microsoft, or whoever else, in my opinion.
That was a clippable nugget right there. I like that. That's a life maxim. Do the thing that gets you the result, takes the least amount of stress, and leaves some creative energy to use leftover. Let's use that creative energy and talk about those 2-word subject lines. Can you give some examples for the demo company?
Yeah, sure. So they actually sent me most popular subject lines by how many unique companies use these. So I'm just referencing a document here to see if there's anything interesting. A lot of it, guys, is going back to your industry that you're emailing, that you're talking to. So there's a tried and true, or at least has been tried and true approach that is quick question as a email subject line. The problem that I see with that now is everyone's received emails that say quick question and often realize they were unsolicited. Now, in a non-tech industry, that's less true. So if we're talking about you're emailing contractors, they might open quick question a lot more likely than somebody who runs a software company like I do, because I'm seeing all of these things all day long. So I have a bit of a bias here. But if I were to choose 1 or 2 things that I would test inside of a subject line, it's probably going to come down to the company name or the person's name. I don't know if they gave me a stat on this. Someone gave me a stat on this. Let me see if it's right on this sheet. Well, I don't want to leave dead space in this pod, so let's do this.
While you look, I'll ask Ivan's next question here.
Okay, sweet.
So he says, I thought last time I checked, Google was against cold email. Did they switch their stance? So I'm warming up a couple of Google emails right now. I can let you know, but that was recommended to me by a couple email guys as well. Just set them up through Google Workspace and then run them through instantly. So Matt may have additional thoughts on that.
Yeah. So I'll jump to that in a second. So the stat that I was looking for isn't here, but the gist of it is this. There's an expression called naming someone's baby. If you walk up to someone and you ask them how their daughter by name is, you've stopped them in their tracks. And people's businesses, for better or for worse, are often just as important, sometimes unfortunately more important to them than their children. So if you can name their child in that subject line, then you are breaking some psychological barriers of attention and going, oh, this is important, relevant to the thing that's most important to me, right? And so you're trying to figure out if that's them themselves or if it's their business. And that probably depends on if you're in an industry that's full of egotistical people that want to hear their own name, or that care so much about their business and its success, they don't care as much about themselves. Then I'd lean into probably company name in the subject line and testing that out, because you're grabbing attention. And you're kind of convicting someone to figure out, well, what's the rest of that say? Because that just poked at the thing that matters almost the most in the world to me.
That's interesting. I just saw a Jesse Itzler reel where he was talking about that, and I shared it with my email guy. Nice. He said when he was doing Marquee Jet, he would send the cold emails, and it would be the business name X Marquee Jet. So it would be like Coldlytics X Marquis Jet, and that was his cold email opener, and he said it got ridiculous.
Who is
opens.
this?
Jesse Itzler with well, he started Marquis Jet. He has the big calendar, like the big yearly calendar. He's got a book out.
Yeah.
David
He was
Goggins.
on My First Million recently. I think I listened to him.
Yes, he was. Yeah, doing the planning one. He had David Goggins live with him for a month, and then he wrote a book about it. Super cool guy.
What an evil thing to do to yourself.
his wife agrees with you. Basically, David Goggins lived in their house for a month. He like slept downstairs, and then he'd come in at like 3 a.m. and be like, "Jesse, get up, we're going for a 10-mile run," and then you have to give you
that. Don't let me near either of those people. Yeah, that sounds terrible to me.
But anyway, he said it worked really well. But I'll let you get to Ivan's question here.
I believe it did. So just recap Ivan's question for me so I hit it directly.
Last time you checked, Google was against cold email. Did they switch their stance?
I don't know if I can make a blanket statement on this, so don't quote me on it. Again, here's what I do know is if you were to zoom out of all the do's and don'ts and the red tape here for a second, does Google know you? And does Google know the person on the other side? And if you know each other, and if you've just talked in passing while you were out for a jog with no cell phones and nothing listening to your conversation or not, are you connected to that person? They don't concretely know that. So they use things like, we'll call them signals back from your email process to determine that. And that's what it's coming down to. It's not, is it a cold email or not? That's not really a question. That's like a symptom. It's like, oh, this looks like cold email, but actually, is it helping people? Are people happy to get these emails? Is it productive? We don't care if it's cold email. If people are upset and pissed off, we're shutting that down as quickly as we possibly can. And that pretty much divides the men from the boys in cold email. And unfortunately, most of us are boys for a very long time. And a few of us grow up and the rest of us decide to do something else, which is remain boys. So,
isn't that true for business in general?
You just have to choose who you're going to be and how much grit you've got. That's really what it's going to come down to. If you're talking about, these 1% gains and getting up on as much leverage here as you can and pushing this as hard as you can. If you're getting success and you're making people happy with these cold emails and you're getting thanks for sending a cold email, that's when you know you're down the right path. And I've reached that after I tell people I've managed about 3 million cold emails to date. I would say about 2 million of them were a total waste of time. And of the second million, only the last 200,000 were useful. So, it's a bit arbitrary. I'm sure that's not, the reality of it. But my point is it took that much to really get to a point where I actually had people say, thanks for this. I'm sending this to my team and send things like that back to me. I sent a lot of stuff that didn't work because I was stubborn to do testing of other styles of outreach. And what that meant was accepting that, hey, the way I've done this for the last month or last year is not the only way to do something. I should break the mold and say something different, give something away maybe, or bring something interesting to them and just say, hey, I don't know if you saw this about your competitor. They did this. We've done something similar. And we could do that for you too at a much better probably rate. Just something different than what you might have thought was comfortable, and just trying to shake hands and be a friend is great. But sometimes you got to shake it up and take a different approach to get people's attention. So, don't sleep on the testing and iterating, and you will get to where you want to go with this stuff. But in reality, I think the worst part about this industry is how much time I've personally lost trying to figure out if it was a Google or a Microsoft email account that I should have set up, when I didn't realize 90% of my success was what the friggin' offer was in the email. It didn't matter my subject line. It didn't matter how neatly written the email was. It's just literally, did I offer them something interesting enough for them to reply to? Was like 90% of it. And if I'd done that right from the beginning, we'd have had this podcast already. So that's the truth of it.
That's interesting. Question for you, putting you on the spot here a little bit. Sure. Are you guys running cold email using your own data to reach out to new clients for Coldlytics?
I love this question, because do you eat your own dog food, right? Like you should. Yeah. You should be using your own service. So when we get the business off the ground, absolutely. And then we do it periodically. So one of the things to understand about this channel is it's a high touch channel. What that means is there's high touch and low touch approaches to business. High touch being You sit down, have conversations, close deals, low touch. People can walk themselves through something, buy from you, and never talk to you and never feel like they needed to talk to you. In software, the ideal outcome, unless you're an enterprise product like a Salesforce or a large B2B enterprise, is generally low touch. You want to have a product that's easy for people to come in, sign up, use, and not have to talk to Matt to get what they want. That's what you probably want. You don't want to ask me questions. You want to show up to the website and go, all my questions are answered. Give me what I need. Great. Leave and not talk to anybody. So our goal is to not use cold email to continue to grow. And I just pivot that based on, hey, do I have enough time in my day? Are things slow enough that I could send some cold emails? And generally for the past couple of years, the answer has been no. But there are higher value activities you can do even as a low touch person. So something I'm looking at doing is partnership emails. Rather than emailing to get one customer, you can email to get one consultant who has a book of 50 customers that are ideal for you, and partner up with them. And he tells half of those guys about you and half of those people end up paying you. That was a worthwhile cold email that paid dividends, right? Yeah. So there's always a place for it. But even then, that's a high touch channel where I have to build rapport and trust with that consultant to make that work. So unless it's a high leverage activity, cold email is not a good method for you. It has to have a good return on investment. So if you're making $50 off your cold email, don't send the cold email. Figure something else out. If you're going to make $100, probably still not. If you're going to make $500+ at least off of that one person, then you could pretty quickly see some nice returns, but you have to be confident in that and just kind of do that effort return analysis.
That's huge. Yeah. And I think that you guys have actually done that really well. I've seen you in several groups, kind of become the person that agencies are going to for data. And it's cool to see that because you've worked on, I think Frankie Finn, well, Frankie's actually one of your recommenders. And I think you're in his book too, which is cool. But Frankie talked about going to the shoe buyers. Don't try and sell to the person with no shoes. Sell to the person who has 10 shoes and they've got Jordans and all these different things. But then there's a level above that where you go to the shoe store and you're selling, shoelaces to the people that are already, buying shoes. And you've done a really good job at that.
Right.
7-figure agency, Frankie's group. I'm sure you guys have others, but that's where I see you doing that. So a little bit of an aside from cold email, but something that you guys have done really well. What have we not talked about in relation to this that we should be talking about?
Yeah, I think it depends on the stage of your business. If you are, as most people probably are that are hearing this, in the earlier stage of the business, the reality is if you're not seeing the growth you want to see, you need to be willing to try new things. And that doesn't mean you try something and then you move to the next thing. That's one of the hardest parts about being a new business owner. You don't know what to try, but you need to limit yourself to a couple of things at most. And you need to dedicate yourself to the process. So the analogy I always use when I'm talking to people who are considering doing something like cold email is that they need to picture it like they've never ridden a bike in their life and someone put a speed bike in front of them and expected them to get a mile down the road within the next hour. Oh my goodness, they're going to be bamboozled if they get there at all by not doing anything but walking. And the reality is you need to accept you're going to get on that bike and you're going to fall off it more times than you want anybody to know. And you're going to have skin knees. And then you're going to eventually lean into your momentum and you are going to go way further, way faster than you thought you could have when you first started doing this and fell on your face 16 times. But the reality is, if you didn't fall on your face 16 times, you wouldn't have got on the bike that took you the mile in a matter of minutes. And so that is the difference. You really have to commit to a process and say, did I see this through? Did I start to finish do the generally industry recommended thing, not just the one guy I listened to on a podcast recommendation, not just the one mentor I paid, but industry wide? Did I give this the general amount of effort that people seem to think this requires as a litmus test? The answer is usually no. And that's probably a sign that you need to come full circle and evaluate, hey, do I need to spend more time and resources on this channel or not? And there's more than one right way to grow your business, right? And you can have growth through this. And this isn't the end all be all. You can send door hangers out the next day and you can attend a business conference the next and a trade show booth somewhere else. And they'll all bring you business if done right. But the fact of the matter is we only have so many hours in a day, especially as a new business owner, you've only got so many dollars in the bank account. So you need to figure out what those high leverage activities are, and emails are it. I mean, I'm telling you, there's a platform to give you free emails for people, and you have a free email account that you can go send, and you can create a new email account and use a platform like Woodpecker for probably about $30 a month. So we're talking less than $50 can drum up thousands of dollars a month for you. That's very high leverage from, sitting in your chair versus going to a bunch of conferences, making sure you wore your $300 suit and tried to impress people and came home tipsy with nothing to show for it. Like, that's how I feel most people get started. And in this day and age, it's not that painful. It doesn't have to be. You do have to.
Yeah, that Woodpecker hack with setting up the email and then being able to do warm up, that's huge. That's really massive. Check it out. Matt, do you have an affiliate link for that by chance?
Yeah, I do. Yeah,
shoot it over to me, and I'll put it in the podcast notes.
Sure.
But yeah, makes it really simple. And the affiliate link is just a way to thank Matt for coming on here and giving us some info. Some really good stuff.
I learned a little bit.
Yeah.
The link for people actually is going to take the 7-day trial and extend it to a month. And if you happen to have a larger list than 25, it also increases the amount of contacts you can store on their platform for free for the first month. So it's actually worth using the link. But honestly, just so everyone's transparent, if you sign up, I'm getting a kickback of less than $10 a month, I think. So I don't have much to gain here from you using that link. I just want to see people succeed and tell people that Matt and Lewis were the guys that put them on it.
Yeah, for sure. That's actually really sweet, though, being able to extend the trial, give you some time to fall and scrape your knees. I think Alex Hormozi, back to your bike example, I love that example because it really sucks at the beginning, and it eventually allows you to go much faster. Alex Hormozi has the example, or the maxim, if you will, where he says, be willing to suck for 20 hours on a new thing. And 20 hours is actually quite a long time when you think about it. Like, if you've got an hour a day to learn something, that's 20 days. If you put in 20 hours, 10 hours a day, that's still a couple days of really intense study. Be okay with sucking for that long. And then, you're going to be up and running. And a lot of us have trouble with that. I can certainly tell you that, feeling like you're not good at something is, we're equal parts used to it as business owners, but also we're trying to get through that and be good at what we do. And so to have to go back to the basics can suck. So great analogy there. Great advice here on the podcast today, my man. Appreciate you coming on. Great questions, Ivan, too. Shout out to Ivan for jumping in and asking some good questions. So guys, follow Matt and what he's doing. He's on a lot of the platforms here. I'll have the links in the description for when the podcast actually goes live. But they're doing some cool stuff, and they're scaling to the point now where 25 free leads a month could be yours, actually researched by people for you, depending on, what prompts you put into their platform. Awesome, Matt. One last fire question here. If you could change anything and restart Coldlytics, what would you do? Doesn't have to be related to what we chatted about. Like, if you were to restart, what would be the one thing you changed?
If I could start over in my business, is that what you're asking?
In Coldlytics, yeah.
That's a powerful question.
The list is just scrolling by.
Oh man. Right, I mean, knowing what I know now, I think one of the biggest things that would give me a lot of reassurance and will give a lot of reassurance to business owners is actually an insight rather than an action. That is, there is actual insight and knowledge you can gain on what your business needs to do to grow at each stage that you need to keep context of at each stage, because there's so much knowledge out there that it will feel like you're trying to compete with Coca-Cola and you haven't made your first dollar yet. And you're looking at $1 billion in ad spend that you're up against, trying to be a new soda product. And it just sucks and it's daunting. And the reality is, there is a bell curve described in an old book now called Crossing the Chasm that applies to, at the time, it was for groundbreaking technology products when tech wasn't a super popular thing. And the reality that they broke out in this, and it's an interesting bell curve because it applies to pretty much all businesses, is my opinion. The first little bit of that bell curve, if you didn't go through statistics, a bell curve is something that tells you where the majority is and what they do, how they behave. Well, the first little tiny bit of that, the minority, are people who actually just buy into something because they're excited and they're willing to be part of an innovation and something groundbreaking and just supporting someone because it's a new business. People will pay for that just because they like supporting local or the new guy. Everybody loves an underdog, but you're not going to get rich on those people, but you can validate a concept, and you very quickly then need to move into people who help you understand who will actually kind of carve out a market or an industry or a niche for yourself. And the way you market to those people, maybe you got your first few people through talking to your dad's friends, and you closed a few of them and they met you, some buddies at the golf course, and that was your first few clients. Okay, but you can't do that forever. And that needs to branch into, okay, now that I have clients who all go to the golf course, what do I know about them? Well, they're all in suits all day. So I need to go find more clients who are all in suits all day and try to talk to more of those types of people. Okay, great. And build on that. And then what happens is what they call the chasm is the big gap between gaining early large market adoption and then the late majority that's easy to jump on the bandwagon because everything's proven for them at that point. You're still a newer company. To cross that gap, you need to identify, basically the takeaways from the book is that you need to identify who that industry is and do everything you can to serve them well and dominate that little sector first. And once you've done that, you can then worry about if you want to be the demolition guys for renovation projects first. That's a lot easier to swallow than it is for multi-million-dollar construction projects that rebuild government buildings. Okay. So start with being the guy in renovations, build your reputation on that, and then stem into everything that's tangential to that you can claim some market dominance in as well, building on the success you already have. And you can do that at scale, whether you're trying to dominate an entire market or you're just trying to dominate a smaller local space and you're trying to get those first few people. And the zoom out here, how do you actually do those things? Is specific to your business and the people you're talking to. So remember, if you're day one, you're talking about referrals, your friend, your brother-in-law who will give you $50 to try your software or whatever it might be, that's where you need to start. And you need to bridge that into people that get excited about trying something new and are relevant to what you do, and spin off of those first few people to determine where your early majority is going to come from. And then get yourself over there. And there's a lot of business material on what that looks like. And I mean, if you're curious, you can go read Crossing the Chasm. But that is the main takeaway that I would say is, like, you need to understand the way to be successful is different at each stage. And if you don't know what stage you're in, you're going to take advice from people who are in different stages, doing things that you can't do, and try to win using strategies that only work in a UFC match, and you haven't won your local match yet. And it's like, well, why are you trying that? You know, you gotta win your first fight. Never mind taking on the craziest fighter of all time.
That's huge. That's a mic drop right there. Good book. I haven't checked it out. I will be checking that one out for sure. super applicable to what you guys are doing as well, because you're growing. I mean, the growth I've seen in the last couple of years has been really fun, really cool to watch. So props to you. Appreciate you coming on the podcast, my man. Appreciate you dropping the nuggets there. We'll see you guys next time. And I think if there's one thing to take away from this is, Matt mentioned it, if you're not comfortable doing things that you aren't already doing, then you got to get uncomfortable. You got to get out there, color outside the lines, be a person who markets outside the rules and doesn't just depend on leads coming from where they're currently coming from. So keep that in mind. Pick something from this episode to go do, take action on, and see the growth in your business. All right. We'll talk to you next time, guys. Cheers.